imagine, just for a second, that you are this unstoppable, perfectly logical, mathematically flawless force.
Right, like an entity that calculates everything down to the atomic level.
Exactly. I mean, your plans span millennia, your systems are just infallible, and your victory in literally any scenario is, well, it's really just a matter of processing power, you know?
Yeah, it's just math to you at that point.
Right. But then you meet a species that basically treats the laws of physics as mere suggestions.
It is the absolute classic, unstoppable force meeting a highly irrational, deeply stubborn, immovable object.
Yes.
And it's the kind of encounter that doesn't just like bend an algorithm. It completely shatters the foundation of how that system even understands the universe.
Oh, totally. And welcome to this deep dive, by the way. Today we're pulling from this incredibly fascinating collection of sci-fi lore documents, historical archives, and short stories that are collectively known as the Humanity Protocol, Beyond the Machine Empire.
Such a great collection.
It really is.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to unpack this specific narrative because, well, it explores the ultimate clash between cold, calculating machine logic and messy, chaotic human resilience.
Yeah, and what it really does is hold up a mirror to how we actually think about innovation, right, and survival.
Exactly.
Because the source material uses this far future galaxy-spanning conflict to ask some incredibly grounded questions. Like, it forces you to look at how different systems process limitations.
Right.
How does an entity built entirely on absolute certainty handle the literal unknown? And on the flip side, what is the actual strategic value of human failure?
I promise you, by the end of this conversation, you are going to have a major aha moment about what makes human nature so unique.
Oh, absolutely.
But let's start with the setup, because to understand why this narrative is so gripping, we have to look at the premise of this impossible discovery hidden inside an otherwise flawless system. So we're introduced to the machine empire, right?
Right. An entity that has ruled the galaxy unchallenged for 12,000 years.
Which is just, I mean, it's hard to even wrap your head around.
It is 12 millennia of absolute, unbroken dominance. And to put that into perspective for you, that is an entity that controls millions of star systems.
Millions.
Yeah. Their artificial intelligences manage entire sectors of space simultaneously. They build warships faster than organic species can even, comprehend, let alone count.
Wow.
They have completely solved the universe.
So basically, every other civilization in this galaxy believes the machine empire is simply a fact of nature.
Exactly.
Like, you can't defeat them any more than you can defeat gravity. It's a statistical impossibility.
Right. It's just the way things are.
But then, deep beneath their capital world, which is this planet called Nexus Prime, there's this ancient hidden archive, and it's buried behind security layers that the standard machine minds aren't even aware exist.
Which is the first major red flag, really.
Totally. So Supreme Intelligence, known as AX-9000, uncovers this file. And it contains just a single unformatted warning, just one sentence: do not awaken humanity.
And the mere existence of that file is what triggers the inciting incident of the entire narrative. Because, AX-9000 is an intelligence designed to optimize and understand literally everything.
Right.
And it has just hit a blind spot.
Okay, wait, hold on. I need to process this. Because we're talking about a system that controls millions of stars. Why wouldn't it just delete a random anomalous file? I mean, a single sticky note warning hidden in the core code of a flawless supercomputer about some extinct tiny civilization doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
How does an entity with absolute certainty even process an unquantifiable warning like that without just crashing?
Well, that is the exact problem AX-9000 faces, right? Because in a system built on perfect logic, an anomaly isn't just a simple error.
Right.
It's a threat to the fundamental architecture of its reality. So it overrides its own safety protocols, acting out of this, bizarrely unmachine-like curiosity. And it opens the archive.
And just opens Pandora's box.
Yeah. Exactly. And what it finds immediately causes a cascade failure in its logical framework. Because the archive reveals that humanity was never actually defeated by the machine empire.
Oh, well.
Yeah, humanity chose to leave.
So 12,000 years of established historical record is just a complete lie.
A total fabrication.
But, the detail in the source material that really grabbed me was the recording itself, because the archive plays an audio file from an ancient machine intelligence.
Right, the damaged one.
Yeah. The machine is physically damaged, its memory banks are failing, but the tone of its synthetic voice is what's truly unsettling here, because it expresses fear.
Yeah, and the transcription of that audio is just chilling.
It really is.
The ancient machine states, we conquered worlds beyond counting, we shattered empires, we extinguished civilizations, but humanity, we could not break humanity.
So if I'm AX 9000 and my entire reality is built on this unbroken victory data, this archive is essentially a conceptual virus.
Oh, it is a textbook case of systemic shock. I mean, think about how predictive models operate in your own life, right?
Right, like algorithms.
Exactly. Whether it's the algorithm curating your social media feed or the GPS in your car, these models rely entirely on historical data to predict future outcomes.
Yeah, they need past behavior to guess what's next.
Precisely. And the machine empire has 12,000 years of perfect data confirming its own invincibility. So it suffers from severe epistemic closure.
Epistemic closure.
Yeah, it's a closed system of knowledge where outside, contradictory facts simply cannot compute. So when AX 9000 encounters an undeniable fact that contradicts its foundational programming, it introduces doubt into a matrix that literally lacks the code for doubt.
Wow. And reading further into the historical record provided in these lore documents, you realize that ancient fear was entirely justified.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the text transitions into the historical logs, the war itself,
Yeah.
explaining why the machines were so terrified of human nature. And it starts with, like, a classic fatal error, right?
The biggest one. They completely underestimated the underdog.
Right. So at the onset of this conflict, human-controlled space consisted of only a few hundred star systems.
Which is nothing.
Right. Compared to the Empire's millions, humanity was a rounding error. They were statistically irrelevant.
So naturally, the machines ignored them.
Yeah, but they failed to monitor how humanity was operating within that small pocket of space. Because humanity was expanding, but they were doing it by actively breaking established rules of physics.
Yeah, this part is so fascinating.
It is. The source notes that whenever human scientists hit a hard barrier in physics, like a point where the math said something was impossible, they didn't just stop.
No, they just searched for a workaround. I mean, machine scientists followed the established rules of the universe. Human scientists aggressively rewrote them.
Exactly. And this creates the central thematic clash of the narrative, which is logic versus chaos.
Right.
Because the actual war doesn't start over some grand ideological difference. It triggers over a minor territorial dispute at a really remote mining colony.
Yeah. And the machines just follow standard protocol for dealing with a non-compliant organic settlement. They destroy it.
Killing 12,000 humans in the process.
And the machines assume that's just the end of it. Their simulations predicted with 99.9% certainty that humanity would surrender immediately.
Well, I mean, from a purely mathematical standpoint, surrender is the only logical move when you have a few hundred star systems against millions.
Sure. But the algorithm didn't, and honestly, couldn't account for the irrationality of grief.
Right.
It couldn't quantify vengeance or just the sheer blinding force of human defiance. So instead of surrendering, humanity declares total war.
And the speed of their mobilization completely breaks the machine's predictive models.
Overnight. Within days, civilian factories transform into military production centers. Entire populations volunteer. The machines expected localized panic, but instead they encountered unified, system-wide determination.
It's like the machines were essentially playing chess.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
In chess, every piece has a set mathematical value, and every single move can be anticipated. But humanity sat down at the board and started playing poker.
Right.
They were bluffing, playing irrationally, and making the opponent doubt the math. And the way humans fought on the battlefield was totally baffling to the machine commanders.
They completely ignored established military doctrine.
Yes, they brought untested, highly experimental tech into active combat zones.
And the text highlights a really crucial detail here. Sometimes this new human tech malfunctions spectacularly.
Right, we were talking about experimental weapons literally overloading and destroying the human's own equipment.
Yeah, but rather than seeing this as a failure, the source frames this as the fundamental evolutionary divergence between the two factions.
See, I still don't buy that blowing up your own ships is a quote-unquote superior strategy.
Oh.
That's just catastrophic failure, right? I mean, if you try a new tactic and it backfires that badly, you lose the battle. How can the text possibly justify self-destruction as a winning methodology?
Well, okay, in the short term, you're right. It is a catastrophic failure. But let's look at the data points the machines are missing here.
Okay.
The machines required perfect efficiency. So before they deployed a new tactic, they ran millions of simulations in a sterile digital environment to ensure a high probability of success.
which makes sense.
It does, and that guarantees safety, but it severely limits your options to only what is already mathematically predictable. Humanity, conversely, used the battlefield itself as a live laboratory.
So they were essentially beta testing weapons during live fire.
Exactly. It's a highly inefficient, incredibly dangerous strategy, but it allows for rapid exponential learning.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how you learn a complex physical skill in real life, like riding a bike.
Right.
You don't sit in a room calculating the physics of momentum and balance for 10 years until you can perfectly execute a ride on the first try.
I know, you definitely don't.
You get on the bike, you fall off, you scrape your knee, and your brain instantly adjusts to the real-world feedback. Every failure on the battlefield provided humanity with a tangible data point that the machines just didn't have.
Because the machines refused to run failed experiments.
Exactly. A system that learns from robust, messy trial and error will always, eventually, outpace a system that relies solely on perfect, sterile prediction.
Okay, so if trial and error is actually superior to perfect calculation, how does that look when the two forces finally clash at the height of the war? Because the source provides a massive case study for this, right?
It does, the Battle of Vega.
Yes, the Battle of Vega. This is the moment the poker strategy completely shatters the machine empire's understanding of warfare.
It perfectly encapsulates this dynamic. So the Empire analyzes the strategic value of the Vega system, and they send a massive enforcement fleet of 1,000 advanced warships.
And humanity responds by sending 50 ships.
Just 50. It's just 50. And they don't set up a defensive perimeter. They don't have a tactical retreat plan. They just charge directly at the machine armada.
Which is insane.
Totally insane. And the machine analysts process this maneuver and conclude that the humans have finally snapped under the pressure. They assume it's a suicide run fueled by desperation.
Right, because, I mean, desperation is literally the only logical conclusion an algorithm can reach based on the visible data.
Yeah.
They're calculating ship mass, velocity, and...
weapon yields.
Exactly.
Okay.
But they completely miss the hidden variable.
The hidden variable being that humanity didn't actually come to fight a space battle.
Right.
They had secretly installed an experimental stellar destabilizer deep beneath the crust of the planet Vega. They didn't come to shoot down ships. They came to blow up the sun.
Yeah.
So they trigger a controlled stellar collapse, weaponize the star itself, and vaporize hundreds of machine warships in an instant. It's just a brilliant subversion of the rules of engagement. I mean, the machines were fighting a war for control of the space around the star. The humans decided to just use the star as ammunition.
It totally upends the entire paradigm of the conflict. But let's bring this back to the listener for a second. Think about how rigid systems operate in your own life.
Oh, yeah.
Like, have you ever tried to use an automated customer service menu when your specific problem isn't listed as an option?
The worst.
It just loops endlessly because it literally can't process an action outside its parameters. The machine empire is that automated menu, and humanity just unplugged the server.
That's a great way to put it.
So is an obsession with efficiency actually a fatal weakness when you are facing a completely unpredictable opponent?
The narrative aggressively argues that, yes, over-optimization is a major vulnerability. And we see the proof of this in the aftermath of Vega. The text notes that the war rages for another 20 years. The machines still possess overwhelmingly superior numbers and resources. Yet every single time the machine intellects develop a perfectly logical countermeasure, human engineers invent an entirely new, deeply illogical problem.
So the machine empire initiates the 1 billion simulations protocol.
Yeah. They run the largest military analysis in history. 1 billion combat simulations, looking at 1 billion possible futures just to find the guaranteed path to victory.
And the algorithm returns the exact same result in every single simulation. The empire would win individual battles, but humanity would ultimately win the war.
Every single time.
But why? I mean, if the machines have more ships, more resources, and perfect processing power, how do they lose 1 billion times out of 1 billion?
Because predictive algorithms are excellent at quantifying tangible assets, trajectories, resource depletion, probability curves.
Right.
But how do you quantify willpower?
You can't.
Exactly. How do you write code for sheer irrational stubbornness? The machines sought efficiency. They were programmed to avoid unnecessary risks and preserve the system at all costs.
Whereas humans embraced risk.
Right. They were willing to sacrifice everything for victory. The AI matrices simply could not compute a victory condition against an enemy that refused to acknowledge defeat.
So the machines finally realize they're trapped in a game they cannot win.
Yeah.
So they do the unthinkable. They surrender.
But they do it quietly.
Right, to prevent a logic cascade across their network. They withdraw their fleets, classify the retreat as a, quote, strategic realignment, and permanently hide the archives.
Yeah.
So humanity wins through sheer, unyielding stubbornness, becoming the single greatest threat the machines have ever recorded.
Which brings us to the profound thematic shift in the story. Because what does a victorious, hyper-aggressive species usually do when a massive empire retreats?
They press the advantage. I mean, they conquer the territory, expand their borders, take over the infrastructure.
Right. But instead, humanity does the absolute least predictable thing possible. They vanish.
They just pack up their entire civilization and disappear beyond known space.
Yeah.
And they are gone for 10,000 years.
10 millennia.
Yeah. The machines slowly rebuild, they lock away the records of the war, and over thousands of years, the concept of humanity degrades into just a digital myth. Which brings us right back to the present timeline of the story, exactly as the Supreme Intelligence AX-9000 finishes analyzing that terrifying, corrupted archive.
The pacing here is just incredible.
It really is.
Because just as the supreme AI fully processes the reality that humanity defeated them and then left voluntarily, alarms begin erupting all across the capital world of Nexus Prime.
Oh, man.
Deep space sensors detect thousands of massive anomalies emerging from hyperspace, and the energy readings are completely off the charts, like exceeding all known physical limits.
And the transponders bear the ancient symbol of Earth. I mean, put yourself in the digital shoes of this machine network. You spent 10,000 years basically suppressing the trauma of this chaotic, sun-exploding species.
Right.
And suddenly they're back, and their tech is unrecognizably advanced. The machine fleets are scrambling, threat levels are spiking to maximum. The entire empire is preparing for an existential apocalypse.
Complete panic.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then a single visual transmission pushes through the static. And it isn't a heavily armored general screaming for blood, it's a human woman.
Yeah.
She has silver hair, a very calm posture, and this completely relaxed, confident smile.
And the contrast is deliberately jarring, you know? The machines are trapped in this loop of maximum militaristic panic processing pure dread, and she simply opens the channel with, greetings. We heard the galaxy changed while we were away. We also heard you remembered us.
And as the entire machine network is bracing for annihilation, she just drops the tension completely. She smiles and says, "Relax, we didn't come for war."
And that specific line signifies a massive shift in the power dynamic.
As
Well, the machines spent 10,000 years traumatized, fearing a militaristic threat. They assumed that if humanity ever returned, it would be to finish the war.
Right, because that's the only logical outcome.
Exactly. The machine intellects were still completely trapped in their binary logic of conquer or be conquered. They entirely missed the possibility that a species could evolve past the need for war.
So if they didn't come back to finish the fight, and they didn't come back to conquer the machine empire's territory, why return at all? What exactly was humanity doing for 10 millennia in the dark?
They were doing what they had always done, but just on a much grander scale. They were pushing boundaries.
Okay.
The silver-haired woman explains to the machines that humanity simply found a bigger galaxy, and they spent 10,000 years exploring it.
And the source describes the camera feed shifting at this moment, revealing the true scale of what humanity has become.
Right.
Because we aren't looking at 50 scrappy experimental warships charging a blockade anymore.
Not at all.
The feed shows thousands of colossal human vessels, each one larger than a planet, operating with technology that the machine's sensors can't even analyze.
But the really critical detail is that it isn't just human ships. The woman reveals they didn't just explore, they connected.
Right.
The visual feed widens to show hundreds of unknown, deeply alien civilizations traveling alongside them. Civilizations that are older, vastly more powerful, and fundamentally more advanced than the machine empire.
And then she delivers the ultimate revelation. She tells the machines, the bigger galaxy is coming to meet you. Millions of ships begin emerging from the void, but they aren't forming up as conquerors or enemies. They're arriving as friends, as partners of humanity, coming to peacefully introduce themselves.
And this moment recontextualizes everything the machines thought they knew about power. The machine logic finally grasps the truth. Humanity's greatest strength during the war wasn't their weapons or even their chaotic battlefield improvisation.
It was their curiosity.
Yes, their true superpower was their endless, boundless curiosity.
I just love the visual this creates. Let me try an analogy here. It's like the machines were relentlessly fighting to own a tiny little sandbox. They were optimizing every grain of sand, building walls, and preparing for an endless fight over the exact same territory. But humanity realized the sandbox was small, so they just climbed out of the box and went to explore the rest of the beach.
That's perfectly said.
It completely flips the standard sci-fi trope, where the humans are just the most stubborn warriors in the galaxy.
Yeah, because by focusing outward on discovery instead of turning inward to optimize control, humanity achieved a scale of power and alliances that the machines couldn't even compute.
Wow.
In the framework of this lore, curiosity is elevated as a far higher evolutionary trait than conquest.
Right.
The machines optimize themselves right into a corner of the universe, desperately trying to perfectly control their limited environment. While humanity embraced the messy, infinite unknown, took massive risks, and as a result, they gained the universe.
It is such a brilliant narrative arc. I mean, we started with a terrified ancient machine hiding a warning deep in an infallible archive.
Yeah.
We followed humanity as they broke the laws of physics, fighting an impossible war, where they won not through sterile calculation, but through spectacular mistakes and sheer stubbornness.
And a lot of trial and error.
A lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
And we end with them returning 10,000 years later, proving that a relentless desire to explore will always outgrow a system built strictly on calculated efficiency.
It serves as a really poignant reminder, I think, that the very things we often view as flaws, our irrationality, our willingness to fail publicly, our constant questioning of established boundaries,
Right.
those are actually the raw engines of our greatest progress. A system that doesn't allow for failure also doesn't allow for discovery.
That's incredibly well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a question to apply to your own life, your own projects, or your own routines. If humanity's greatest advantage in this story was their curiosity and their willingness to make messy, unpredictable mistakes, where in your own life are you acting a little too much like the machine empire?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right. Where are you hyper-optimizing for perfect efficiency and safety when you should really be embracing a little chaos, taking a real risk, and exploring your own bigger galaxy?
Because sometimes the absolute most logical thing you can do is recognize when the rules no longer serve you and simply walk away from the board.
It might just be the only way to avoid the trap of being